Hello, my name is Cory for the OneGreatWorkNetwork.com. I am here with a very special guest, Mark Passio. I'm very grateful to be talking to him. Hey, Mark, nice to be talking to you.
How
And
you doing, Corey?
today is October 8th, 2021. There's a lot of events happening in the world, and if people want to learn Mark's perspective on what's happening in the world, he's been covering a lot of that. He's been talking about COVID, what's been happening with the lockdowns and the whole pandemic and all the situations in the world. And today we're going to go a little deeper into the mind of Mark Passio, but also a lot of questions that people have about these ideas of truth, freedom, and natural law, which is what we do at the One Great Work Network as a collective of individuals, is teach that knowledge for free to the whole world. And so I'm grateful to be part of that network. I want to say thank you, Mark, for inviting me also onto that network. And I'll be asking Mark a little bit more challenging questions here today because I see that there's a lot of questions that perhaps have not been asked to you, and I want to give a little bit more of a challenge. However, that being said, you did release a documentary recently, right? The Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law.
Absolutely. Finally came out with it. It was 2 years in the making. Very, very happy with the way it came out. We're going to be releasing that publicly to the general public out of my gifts area of my website on November 11th is our target date. That will be the 14th year anniversary of What on Earth is Happening. So we'll be releasing the Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law documentary for free to the public on all my usual media platforms on November 11th of this year.
Awesome. Now, what would you say the documentary is good for? Somebody who maybe, is interested in freedom and truth. I thought it was fantastic, but what would you say it's good for somebody who wants
I
to
would
watch it?
say it's particularly good to be used as a primer for the ideas of objective morality and natural law as a basis for human freedom. If people have not really considered the notion that what really leads to true freedom in our world is to behave in accordance with moral laws that are really set in the universe, that are a part of nature all around us. If they've not considered that idea and they're a beginner to that notion that there are laws that actually bind and govern human behavior and bring us, dependent upon the way that we behave, our consequences that we then must experience in the world altogether, collectively as a species, then this documentary, I think, is a primer for total beginners to those ideas. For those who have completely considered those ideas and fleshed them out and talked about them and would say that they know a lot about that process and how it works, I would say that this documentary is sort of a refresher course, but it's not going to be a lot of new material for people who have already studied things like natural law. For those who are new to it, though, I think it's something that is going to create some fertile ground for the processing of these ideas in people's minds and the spread of these ideas on a worldwide basis. At least that is my hope.
Great. Yeah, and I've been sharing it with a lot of people that I know. I actually set up watch parties in real life with people that I know, and so far, I mean, people they love the fact that you have questions in the video and you actually talk to people on the street. I love that too. And what I did was I created a sheet of questions and I asked my participants at my watch party the same questions before they watched the documentary so they can connect the dots a bit more themselves.
Interesting. What kind of results did you get with that? I'd be curious to hear. Did any kind of opinions or mindsets change after watching it, or did they
Right.
remain the same? Like, did they know a lot going in? What kind of results did you get?
Yeah, so I got a lot of questions after, being that, I also teach the knowledge. I guess it helps to also be there with the documentary after. But I feel like the documentary covered pretty much everything, and they were sort of just trying to scramble, like feeling a little bit, uncomfortable with some of these truths that were being delivered to them because maybe their previous answers were, okay, everything's subjective and I don't know, and it's sad. But they started to see also in the video that the people on the street were saying, well, I don't know what a right is. I don't know what freedom is.
Right.
And they were like, wait, that's not right. That within itself is not right because people can't defend their rights without that knowledge.
That was the whole purpose of why we went in and asked those man on the street questions. We wanted to show that people really had not even barely considered these ideas, let alone understood them with any completeness.
Right.
So I think that showed where we're at as a species and what our work is to do to communicate those ideas. That's the primary reason we did those interviews on the street.
Right. So what I did too is I said, hey, here's a bunch of other resources then where you can go if you want to learn more about this, as you also have tons of resources on your website, whatonearthishappening.com. So I appreciate that and how in detail everything is. Some people might think, oh, I put Mark Passio on a pedestal because I'm using his ideas. Just because I'm using your ideas does not mean I put you on a pedestal. I'm putting the ideas on a pedestal. And I just want to reiterate that is, I don't put anyone on a pedestal.
That's something in all of this work that really should be understood, is that no one is asking to create any type of occult of personality with anyone in this entire freedom movement or the movement to try to communicate natural law to others. It is the information that is of paramount importance, not the individuals communicating them. We have to get past the personality and get to the information, and then try to verify the information as true or not. And once we do that, then we'll have a firm grasp of the philosophy, and then we can adjust our behavior accordingly. But it's not about the people. It's about the information and the moral behavior that we all should consider and then align ourselves with. That's what it's all ultimately about.
Right. And some people go as far as to say, well, look at the symbolism on the One Great Work Network. Oh, it's scary and we're part of some sort of cult. It's like, I'm voluntarily joining. I'm educating people for free. I'm not doing this for anything. I'm not being pressured to say what I want, what I'm saying. And I don't know if you've run into some of these people who go out there and say these things, but what would you say to clear up some of the stigma about the symbolism that you use on the website?
Well, that comes from blatant ignorance of the occult world in general. You have a lot of people in the freedom movement who only think that what is going on is a bunch of political and financial machinations by the political and financial elite. And they fail to comprehend and fail to see that there is an entire occult world and an occult agenda behind the political and financial institutions. The lack of understanding of the occult is going to lead to what I would call symbol illiteracy. These types of symbols are all around us, and they're using them to inject messages into our mind at a subconscious level. And if we're not aware of that language of symbolism, then we are not going to be aware of some of the subconscious messages that we're actually being bombarded with on a day-to-day basis through advertising, through the media, etc. And if you do come to a deep study of symbolism and the language that it conveys, you're going to understand that there is not a one-sided meaning to many symbols. Many symbols have different connotative meanings depending on who is using them and how they are using the symbols. So people see the all-seeing eye, and on the One Great Work Network, and they flip out because they have a very, very limited understanding of what that symbol actually represents. So they'll see it on the back of the dollar bill and hear a researcher who hasn't really fully unpacked the meaning of that symbol, its origins, its age. I mean, that symbol could be traced to be well over 12,000 years old in different cultures. So just because it has been used in our civilization for perhaps the last 150 years or so, does not mean that is the be all and end all of the meaning of that all-seeing eye. They'll see that and they'll associate it with what researchers have termed the Illuminati, a term that I particularly don't like and tend to try to shy away from and not use in my work, because that simply means the enlightened ones, the illuminated ones. And the controllers of our world are nothing. They're not enlightened. They're not illuminated. They claim to be, because they have a lot of knowledge about how to manipulate people, about how the human psyche works, and how to take advantage of people who don't know how the human psyche works and then manipulate them to their ends and their aims. So they're not the Illuminati. They're not the illuminated. So I'm sort of like taking that symbol, which has traditionally been a symbol to represent enlightenment, knowledge, spirituality, high level of consciousness, the laws of the creator of the universe. And the creator of the universe, or in Freemasonry, what they refer to as the grand architect of the universe itself. Those forces, okay, those laws that are set in nature. That's what that eye has represented. We do not want to take that part of that symbol and destroy it. What we want to destroy is the base, that pyramid that's unfinished, because that represents building the dark new world order in brick, in stone, in weight that weighs people down, and will eventually, if it is completed, cover up the all-seeing eye of the creator of the universe, will block its laws from creation, will basically block out the light and the knowledge. And that's the last thing that we want as a people. If you simply just interpret the symbol almost on a literal basis, you'll come to that understanding. What happens if the pyramid of stone is completed and the capstone is put on in stone? Well, then it blocks out the all-seeing eye of the creator of the universe. And we do not want that to happen. We want that light to flood the world. We want that knowledge to flood the world. And we want to tear down those bricks of ignorance and things that are holding us back and blocking us from an understanding of natural law. People have never even considered that interpretation of that symbol. Most people have never even considered it. Right. But that is the true breakdown of what that symbol represents. And of course, in my work, I go on a much longer explanation of each aspect of it, right, getting into the gematria of the numbers underneath it and how that could be broken down to represent low consciousness versus higher consciousness. But unless people take upon themselves the study of the occult world and take upon themselves the study of occult symbology from a true perspective, not from a cursory perspective, not from just hearing about it from a couple of researchers, but really digging down into the occult knowledge and the knowledge that's contained in the occult world in unbelievable amounts of books and pamphlets, etc., and really make it one's life's work and study to understand that knowledge comprehensively in a very deep way, to take it into oneself. They're not going to grasp a multifaceted meaning of such a sigil. It's more than a symbol, it's a sigil, which contains many, many symbols and can be interpreted in different ways depending on how it's being used. Until people take on a deep scholarly study of the occult world and occult symbology, I would not expect them to change their very limited, closed-minded perspective when it comes to certain symbolism. And it's a shame, but for people who do that work in detail and in depth, they're going to come away with a whole new perspective and not be immediately quick to jump to an immediate criticism. They're going to look at what the symbol truly represents and, more importantly, how it is being used in the context that it's being used in.
Like language and music and a lot of other forms of art too, right?
Of course. It's all about the purpose of what the person who is using it for. So what are we doing in One Great Work Network? We're trying to enlighten people as to objective morality and natural law and what's going on in our world that is destroying human freedom. And we want to reverse that process because we want to create a truly free society of beings. So why would we use an evil symbol? It makes zero sense, even in the connotation that people are imagining that I'm using this symbol in. And if you know my work. Yeah.
Again, they're looking at you as an individual or what's on the front page, and they're judging the information based on the symbolism or their insecurities. Right. And
it's because they really haven't gone through the work that I've put out. If you went through the work that I put out, you would already understand this pretty clearly. You don't even have to take my word for it. Then you can go off on your own and do a study of the same symbols and confirm what I've said.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's amazing. I mean, you see the whole world differently from there, especially since we're wrapped in so much symbology, like you said. So would there be any resources for new people to this knowledge other than the documentary that you would particularly recommend, maybe from other people as well?
Well, I reference a lot of other people's work on my website, particularly in my podcast section, where I will link to other videos and or books from other content creators and authors. So the resource I always give people to go off into a study of this is my own podcast, which is started as an audio podcast and then transitioned into a video podcast series. So there's 236 episodes to date on my website, whatonearthishappening.com. If you click into the podcast menu, the podcast tab, you'll have access to listen to, watch, and download even every one of those podcasts. So that's a good starting place because I put reference material with each podcast, images, video links, links to books, etc. And that's a good place to start. Now, having said that, within all of those resources, there's bibliographies, there's indexes that you could go through and continue to research indefinitely. Another great place that I recommend to people for books is LibGen, a library genesis. The site is libgen.is. libgen.is, where you could download just about any book on any topic that you want to research into. I feel that the dissemination of knowledge through books is vitally important. People have to read more. They have to read the right books to get this understanding, not just frivolous material. You got to go into the right topics and read the right books on it. And that's a resource that I recommend to people as well. Another one that I've been recommending to people for videos, if they prefer to learn through that form of media, is Consen. That's short for Conspiracy Central, consen.org. It's a BitTorrent tracker where, if you know how to use the BitTorrent protocol on the internet, you just download these little pointer files that then load into a little downloader program. It's much simpler than people make it out to be. And you could download hundreds of thousands of videos from that site. And, there's, again, no end to the learning that could be done. And so I find those two pages as pretty invaluable resources in particular, in addition to my own website, of course.
Awesome. Yeah, and if people are looking for a good torrent program out there, one I would recommend is QBitTorrent, because that one is free, open sourced, and doesn't have any ads. It's kind of styled like uTorrent, but anyways, it's for people who could do their own research, because that is very helpful that they have those resources. We live in the age of mass information, so it's a matter of choice if we want to use that or not.
That's right.
Yeah. So another question I have for you, you see a lot of people talking about lately, the supply chains are breaking down and all this stuff is happening with the economy. Do you see that an economic collapse is coming our way, a world collapse is coming our way? And what would be some tips that you have for some people to prepare?
Not only do I see it as inevitable, that it's not really sustainable the way that the whole economy of our world is set up. So for those who aren't expecting any type of collapse and degradation of the economy and the hardship that may bring, I think that that's wishful thinking. If anything, people should be expecting that and not necessarily encouraging it or welcoming it, but understanding how things are set up, understanding that's practically an inevitability. So if you're not preparing, it's proof that you don't really understand what's taking place and what's going on. I would say definitely have storable water and food. I've been a quote prepper / survivalist for many years. I worked with an organization here in the city of Philadelphia called Survive and Thrive Philadelphia. My buddy Fernando ran it. He was the basic organizer and leader of the group. He was like the founder of the group. And I helped out in the group as an assistant organizer in an informational capacity mostly. I supplied a lot of documents that were put on the group's website, PDFs, research manuals for survival, things like that had come from many different survivalist groups and organizations, and in addition, even military organizations, not only from the United States, but even throughout the world. And I tried to help people excuse me, in their basic understanding of just general readiness. My role wasn't even in any specific area like, first aid or firearms or food preparation, etc. It was a generalist when it came to the dissemination of survivalist information. And my offer that I make on my website, the ARC drive, which stands for Amazing Repository of Knowledge, also has a section in the books section on the drive just called Survival. And many of the documents that I included in the group like Survive and Thrive, not all of them, of course, because I had to make room for other things on the ARC drive, are included there on that drive. And it's just, these are basic primers about readiness and about how to handle situations when they arrive. how to procure water, how to purify water, obviously food preparation and growing. I recommend seed storage. If anything, people should definitely have seeds on hand, because you could sprout seeds and they provide basic nutrients that you could survive on for long periods of time. Obviously, pure water storage. Purify water and then store it. Keep it air free, as anaerobic as possible, so that it will not get any bacteria in it, etc. Obviously, having some type of backup when it comes to a medium of exchange. I favor silver and cryptocurrency. I think people having some level of a cache of those types of things will be at least some type of a hedge, which is better than nothing in the event of an economic collapse. I think that obviously firearms and ammunition are going to be critically important, because it's not just about what you have. There may be many, many immoral people who will just not be ready and not be willing to prepare on their own, and will want to take what people who have prepared have. And, obviously that's theft and that's immoral, and people have the ability to defend what they have procured rightfully and want to keep for their own benefit and survival. So being able to keep it is obviously of paramount importance. So all of those things combined, then you get into things like hand-to-hand combat and martial arts preparation like that. You get into first aid and understanding how to treat wounds, etc. All of those things are going to be vitally important skill sets and resources in the event of any kind of disaster, either economic or even a natural disaster.
Yeah, that's great resources for sure. And even if people live in the city or they're in the country or across the world, I mean, this is something I think if one bank goes down, the whole world is going to feel it. If one thing happens, the whole world is going to ripple effect into that sort of change. People need to be aware nowadays of what's going on, to say the very least.
Absolutely.
So the next topic that I want to talk about, a lot of people are expecting me to ask this question on behalf of my community. So this is about veganism. I differ a little bit from you on this issue, but I agree with you on regards to the morality, right? We shouldn't want to harm other animals, but I also apply that to ourselves, to the environment, to pregnancy, and to smaller animals. I also see there's a danger in grain agriculture. I see that there could be benefits in keto and paleo diets. I see that supplementation could be often very much unnatural, and looking at what's unnatural, looking at the UN agenda and sort of some of the big corporations and what they're pushing, and looking at even the New Age agenda, looking at the free world and what people would do. They would probably have backyard chickens and backyard animals, looking at nutrition and bioavailability. So those are all my reasons. I take it from a conscious point of view, and I say, well, there's people that come at me and they say, well, oh, you're not vegan, blah, 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 and you're not standing for truth. And I'm like, well, human slavery is a great part of the problem, but we should also share our compassion with animals. And I agree that the act of harming something is wrong. But if we're giving two actions, in the case of diet, where both contribute to harm, I want to do the least amount of harm as possible with the knowledge that I have. So the best way to do that would be grow your own food, have your own direct access. What are your views on my view on that? Am I some sort of dangerous person for having that sort of conscious view? And is it bad that I hold, at the very least, vegans accountable because they could be causing unconscious deaths for just going vegan or buying the vegan product, not realizing that that product might have, I don't know, palm oil, which endangers monkeys in South America. They trap them up. It might have grain products and soy that destroy the environment. And, we'd have to be conscious of our choices, I'd say, overall. I also don't think one diet fits for everybody. What would you say about that?
Well, obviously, this is a very nuanced and charged topic, clearly. And I think I've addressed a lot of these issues on my podcast and talked about some of the pitfalls that people could find when they're entering into living a lifestyle that includes a plant-based diet. A lot of people take a militant approach to this, and I do not. I do address it from the purely moral perspective and take the approach of doing least harm, which is, I guess, where we would would differ as to what that approach entails. However, my reasons for choosing a plant-based diet are the primary reason and the primary focus that I consider is that others' lives simply are not ours to take or to control. So if you take it from that foundational principle, principle comes from the Latin principia, which means first things. It means putting the first thing first. And if we're talking about life that is not ours to take, that is the first basic wrongdoing of natural law. That's the first transgression against natural law is murder. So murder is the taking of life or the theft of life that is not ours to take. So if you look at it from the perspective of the least amount of theft, we talk about harm, and yes, harm is absolutely something that we want to look at and try to limit. But if we take it from even a higher level principled standpoint, and we look at what is thieving, what is taking something that does not belong to us as property, then I think the issue clarifies a little bit, at least it should in most people's minds, and understanding that if you are simply removing the life of an animal for your own purposes, that is a form of theft. Now, going to the issue of what creates the least harm for human beings. I have never been a one to say that someone should become vegan overnight or immediately all plant-based overnight. As a matter of fact, I've repeatedly told people that if you look at my own example of how I did it, it took me 12 years to go from a ravenous carnivore who ate more meat than I guarantee you I could put just about anybody that under the table with meat eating, with the way that I put it away back in my youth. And to transition from a ravenous carnivore like that to someone who eats only a plant-based diet and uses no animal products in my nutrition now, that took 12 years, 12 slow, gradual, eliminating one thing after another until I found myself living an entirely plant-based lifestyle. So I would never recommend the doing of this cold turkey or immediately. And when I talk to people who have done harm to themselves by trying to immediately go to a plant-based diet, almost inevitably, almost invariably, it has been people who have done it far too rapidly. Okay, so when we understand the laws of assimilation, which are occult principles and occult laws that apply to the body, meaning that what we take in, okay, the body is going to have to process and figure out ways to use and pathways to use efficiently as energy. We're going to realize that is part of an ingrained process, okay? That is part of a process that becomes habituated, okay? Just like thoughts become habituated in the mind and form neural pathways, the body does the same thing. This is known as the law of assimilation in the occult world, okay? And it has to do with how substances are broken down to become energy that we employ. And the body gets used to these processes, and it sees them, it recognizes them, and then it gets used to how that is done. If you suddenly throw a monkey wrench in there by, say, totally desisting for what was done for 25 or 30 years, and then suddenly doing something different and bringing that down like a hammer, okay, the body is not going to know how to react or what to do. It's going to be like, I don't recognize this. Where is the other things that I was using previously? The process is all thrown in a state of disarray. Okay, that's how the law of assimilation in the body works. So of course, someone who advocates from a militant point of view when it comes to this topic, immediately stop doing this, it's wrong, and you have to immediately change. That's not the proper way of going about it. Okay, the proper way of going about it is recognizing it first from a mental point of view, right? And then you can adjust your alignment with it over a period of time. And the reason you have to do this over a period of time is because you're not going to go against the laws of assimilation. Okay, they are laws. They're not suggestions for the body. They're not suggestions for the physiology. They're laws. Okay, and you have to adjust to this over a period of time naturally in the way that your body responds to. So, and that is how I initially did it. I did it by weaning off of red meat first, okay, which I saw as probably the thing that does the most harm to animals and our environment. Now, next, I weaned off of non-red meats. And I never ate fish because I never preferred the taste of anything that came out of the sea. I just never could develop a taste for it in my life, even in my from my early childhood. So that was never an issue. So it was just red meat and then other forms of meat. So it took me approximately 9 months to completely wean off of just animal flesh. And I thought it would take much longer. I was in preparation myself for this to be a battle and for it to take years. And for me to go along kicking and screaming. You know, I thought that there was going to be the hardest thing that I ever did in my life. And it was actually quite natural once I began it, and my body responded to it favorably. I didn't have a lot of meat cravings. I didn't feel sick. I didn't feel weak. It was nothing like what I was expecting to happen. I was expecting the absolute worst. Now, that being said, I did do it pretty gradually, and I was expecting to do it over maybe a 2-year period, and it took less than one. Okay, so now that having been said, dairy was a problem for me, and it was difficult for me to wean off of that over time. I also used honey for a long period of time until I finally weaned off of that. So, you know, it was a long process when it came to animal byproducts for me, and my body favored a long gradual change for that, and as well as my addictive tendencies, which we all have to some extent or another. A large part of, I feel, animal consumption and byproduct consumption is physiological. It's not just mental. There is a physiological addictive quality to a lot of these things, especially when you look at things that aren't totally pure, that have adulterants in them, like animal hormones and other things that they inject the animals with, like antibiotics and things like that. And the body can tend to become quite addicted to those types of substances and not want to let go of them, just purely from like a point of view that is hold on one moment. I'm having a small tech problem. Okay, it looks like it resolved itself. Something was going on with my screen. Okay. You know, when it comes to what we are putting in our body on a daily basis and what the body continues to expect us to put in, it's like a withdrawal problem at some point. Now, so we can look at that from the body's perspective. So we looked at it from the principle perspective, and then we look at it from the human body perspective. And some people will say not everyone can go plant-based. I disagree with that. I believe we can, as long as we transition properly. Again, the people who I've spoken to over the course of my research and lifetime researching this whole area of topic, and again, I'm having another issue. Can you just hold on one moment? I'm going to resolve this real quick.
Sure.
Okay, I apologize for that. There was a technical problem with a key was held down on a wireless keyboard that I have in here inadvertently, and it was causing a problem on my screen, which was very distracting. So that's resolved. Thanks for dealing with that. Okay, so we talked about the principle first of others' lives do not belong to us to take through theft. Secondly, if we have already, through the laws of assimilation, gotten used to and possibly become physiologically addicted to certain compounds that we have been putting into our body, we don't want to transition abruptly, because yes, that will cause harm to the individual, or anybody suggesting to people to do that cold turkey and instantly. That is not how a plant-based transition should be done. It can definitely be dangerous and cause health problems. That being said, there is a proper way to transition to a plant-based diet. And again, I agree with what you said, that even supplementation can have a lot of adulterants in it and things that we don't want, that aren't part of the natural world. That's why we should be very careful about even supplementation, not only transitioning off of a meat-based diet to a plant-based one, because a lot of products out there have things that are not beneficial to the body. You have to still read labels. You have to still try to get as unadulterated products as possible. Filtration of water becomes important. That's a carrier of nutrients, whether it be through plant-based foods or whether it be through plant-based supplements. supplementation is something I do firmly believe in and practice, but I only try to buy 100% pure supplements, and I'll do capping myself. I won't trust other companies to cap up things because they may use fillers, they may use adulterants, they may not have the purest of intentions or the purest of products. So that's something I definitely agree with. So I will buy pure powders and cap them myself with a capping machine. You can buy these 100 at a time capping machines for like 000 capsules, and you cap a lot. That holds approximately 2 teaspoons of powder, and it's an efficient way of and a very inexpensive way. Capping a powder versus buying a bottle of capped capsules is approximately 8 times less expensive. I mean, I've done the math, and it's literally like an eighth of the cost if you buy in bulk and then you buy capsules in bulk and cap them yourself. So that's what I do with most of my supplementation, and that works really well. I respond to it. I could feel the difference if I slip off of it for a while. I think cold pressed herbs are another great way of getting supplementation if you get them from a reliable source, a reliable company, because liquids taken under the tongue will also be extremely powerful and extremely efficiently absorbed in the body. Now, to go back to the basic philosophy of a plant-based diet, yes, there are practices that are conducted in farming that are not beneficial to the environment. And that's where I think we have to weigh our options of, will animal husbandry contribute more to that degradation of the environment, or will growing plants do that? And I think that the overarching, when this is actually done in a comparative scientific study, it comes down to that medium-sized farms, not big factory agri farms, but medium-sized organizations that grow organically are probably the best. Plant-based organically is probably the best for the environment overall when we compare the opposite extremes. We could look at just animal farming in a mass scale like factory farms do, and then we could look at even plant-based large scale operations that the big names in the agribusiness do, and both of those can contribute very a very damaging impact to the environment. But where most of the modern scientific studies done on this to look at the total elimination, but the reduction of environmental impact, generally agree that medium-sized organic farming is the way to go to do that. And I think then growing in even urban environments, on rooftops, the better distribution, collection and distribution of water and purification of water, to get government out of the regulation of that entirely and let people do that on their own, in cities, and makes use of the space in cities that is unused to do that, I think is very much more sustainable than the ways that we're doing it now by growing entirely outside of cities and then, trucking in and using oil to do that. So there's many different ways to reduce those environmental impacts as well. So I feel when you put all of that together, there are simply incorrect or unsustainable ways of doing it. Then there are sustainable and proper ways of doing it. And I think that is what we need to do, is develop the discernment to put all of that together and see what methods, not only the reduction of eating animals and using their byproducts to transition slowly to a plant-based diet so that we don't damage our health in the process by a sudden and abrupt transition, but to also look at the methods that are really now being studied and scientifically proven to be effective environmentally, not to have those really very damaging impacts on the environment. And I think if we take all of that into consideration, I feel that the plant-based medium-sized organic type farming would, and combining that with urban methods of food and water procuration, would be the optimal way to do it when we look at all of the other available alternatives. Again, that being entirely said, I don't tell anybody to immediately go plant-based. I tell them to look at those options, or even just reduce their impact when it comes to using animals and their byproducts. I'm not one of these militant vegans that says you must do this immediately overnight. Look at all of the data sets, look at all of the options that we have at our disposal. We have the ability to do this. Each individual has that ability and has the ability to do it in the right way that actually does do the least amount of harm to both ourselves and in a responsible way. Exactly. And that's my approach. That's why I don't make enemies with people who may be looking at these things. I try to give them some reasonable options to explore, and then to make the decision from a moral perspective to do that because they want to reduce that harm, and then responsibly research the best ways of going about doing that. This is part of what I term in life. I teach this in my technology course, How to Become the True Media seminar. It's called best practices, right? So it's like we can do things that are better than the ways that we're already doing them. And we can't get too attached to pre-existing methods and pre-existing ways that we've just been rolling along, going about because it's more comfortable. There are better ways of doing it. Some of them create some discomfort initially because there are new ways that we have to look at and perceive things and then align our behavior to that. So not every method is as good as every other one. In best practices, when I teach this in technology, I make people fully aware there's really bad ways of doing something, but they achieve the result you're looking for, right? But you'll get there in a hard way. You'll get there in a way that's not optimal, that's not efficient, that's not optimized, right? Then there's ways that are just mediocre, and they do it sort of half-ass, and they're okay, but they still take a lot of time and they're not optimally efficient. Then there's best practices. These are excellent methods. They get it done the right way and they get it done efficiently. So you utilize your energy in an optimal capacity. And that's what I think the approach that should be taken with that is best practices. Attempt to identify the methods that do the least amount of harm, and also apply first principles in addition to that. So I think if we take that general approach, we don't have to have this militant or super conflicting, mindset with each other, even in the whole community, that we could understand we're all really looking for the same thing. We're looking for good health. We're looking for a good environment. And, we're looking for optimal energy for ourselves and for the way everything else works in our environment. And, I think if people do that and they study it first from the principled point of view, then don't abandon it because you say, well, the way that some people are doing this aren't the best practices. Agreed. Absolutely conceded and agreed. All right. That is conceded, right? But there are those best practices. We just have to discover them and then advocate for them to be done that way. And I think when we combine both of those, first principles and best practices, that's when we're going to see the real truth come to light and what we really should be doing as a species come to light. And then it's our responsibility to align with that and make that part of our behavior.
I'd say it's probably important we're free first too, right? Before we can talk
without
about
any doubt, that has to come first and foremost. I do not agree with the vegan community on the fact that we have to only advocate for animal rights first. So many vegans advocate for animal freedom and then turn right around and say human beings should be enslaved by the mechanism called government. So they don't understand first principles. First of all, if our freedom isn't there, what opportunities do we have or possibilities do we have? That's what freedom ultimately is our possibility to enact the things that we want to see happen for the betterment of ourselves and our community. That's what freedom is. If we don't have that and we're limited endlessly and regulated endlessly, we have no possibility to help the animal kingdom or our environment. That is going to be made impossible by the evil entity called government. So absolutely, our freedom has to be of our paramount importance. And then I think other things will fall into place. Once those possibilities get opened up for us, other things are going to fall in place much easier, and they're going to come to our understanding much easier because of the free flow of information that would result in a free society. Then many more people will understand and adapt to those occult principles.
I think it's the nature of the internet that people look for controversy. They look for debates. What could I nitpick on and go deeper into when it comes to some of these other topics when human beings are being enslaved right now?
Let's free ourselves up first. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Let's get our freedom taken care of first. Then we could act as the stewards of the animal kingdom and our environment that we're intended to be, which we certainly are not doing a good job of right now.
We wage war against our own species. It's crazy. So another question I have for you, and this is something I noticed also. So you came from the Church of Satan. You were part of those dark energies within your lifetime, and there was people who also left the church with you. I'm pretty sure you mentioned Nicholas Schreck, and I'm pretty sure he also got married or was in a relationship with Anton LaVey's daughter, Zena, which is her name that she goes by now. And they're all like Buddhist teachers. They do other things too. Do you think they would have a similar perspective when it comes to natural law, or if they've ever been introduced to that, if you've ever reached out to them? And I have
You
another
know, I
question
do
as
not
well.
know. That's a very interesting question. And I don't know what their perspective is these days. I would definitely be interested in perhaps contacting them and finding out about what that is and if they've come sort of all the way in that perspective. I find it almost ultra amazing that someone like Shrek, who I would have considered an absolute psychopath back in the days that he was involved in the Church of Satan, to have abandoned the satanic ideology and gone over even into a an Eastern esoteric tradition like Mahayana Buddhism, which he now advocates for. So it's something that is of a great deal of interest to me, because I want to try to find the master key to unlock the satanic mindset in the general population. That's what we're all really looking for. People have still not made the fundamental recognition that what the general mindset of our population at large is a satanic one, because people think of Satanism in terms of Hollywood. They think of it as in terms of worshiping the Christian devil. They don't even understand that it is the ideology of the rulers of our world. It is a purely a self-based ideology. It's selfishness at its root. Okay, it's moral relativism at its root. It's doing whatever you want because what's right for you is what's right. There are no objective standards of right or wrong in Satanism. It's whatever I benefit from is what's right, and whatever prevents me from getting what I want is wrong. It's a very, very selfish, pure egotistic minded ideology and way of being and looking at the world. And most people have this ideology. I mean, if you just ask, do most people just think about themselves all day, every day, from the moment they get up till the moment they go to sleep? Are they only thinking about what they want for themselves, what they want to do for their own lives, how they want to benefit from whatever they get? And that's it. They don't ever even think of anything wider than themselves, their own things, their own family, their own selfishness, their own resources. That's about it. That's all they focus on the entirety of their day.
Or their ego
This
being
is
right.
That's it. That's Satanism. That's what Satanism is at its core. It is the decision to only care about oneself and maybe one's family, your immediate family or even your extended family. And that's about it. That's all most people care about. That's what Satanism is. And you can't convince people that that's what Satanism is. I was a former priest in the Church of Satan organization. So I know just about everything there is to know about what Satanism really is. And people will argue with me, former clergy in one of the main organizations of this ideology, and insist, no, that's not what Satanism is. It's worshiping the devil. No, that has nothing to do with real Satanism. That's little childish, teenager going out in the woods with their heavy metal friends Satanism. That's not what the real satanic ideology that runs the world. The rulers of our world are Satanists. This is their mentality. We matter. We're the kings of the world. We're the gods of this world. We're going to get what we want. We're going to take what we want. It doesn't matter if anybody else wants to stand in our way. We'll mow them down if we have to. That's their ideology. That's their thought process. Okay, that's what Satanism is. So going back to your original question about Shrek and LaVey, Zena LaVey, his former wife, I don't think they're still married. I could be wrong about that, but I would definitely like to hear perspectives perspectives of former Satanists such as myself, who really did deeply understand the real satanic ideology and participated in it at often a high level. Okay, because for them to reverse that mindset is a tremendous accomplishment as far as I'm concerned. I have heard some interviews with Shrek since, and I do believe he is sincere in his abandonment of his former satanic ideology, and is truly involved in Buddhism from a serious perspective and point of view these days. As to whether that translates, as you inquired, to a deep understanding of natural law is entirely a different issue, because I could go over to the Buddhist temple down the street here and ask them about natural law, and they'd be like, I don't even know what you're talking about. What are you on about? You know, so just because someone's involved in any type of other alternative religious perspective does not mean that they really do deeply understand true objective morality and natural law. But it's definitely a question I would like to have answered. So if you find any contact for them, I'd say go for an interview, or if you want to put them in contact with me, I'll try to do an interview with them, because it's definitely something that highly interests me.
Yeah, it interests me too. I've seen some of their works on their websites recently, and it's pretty interesting. They talk about how, don't fall for different philosophies and stuff. They're gonna all fool you in a sense. And they say, a lot of individualistic type of thinking and empowerment, which means bringing power to people, like you say, the light, the knowledge. So one of the questions that I was going to kind of head into that was with nature worship, because you talk a bit about like sun religions, moon religions, people worshiping elements of nature, and we talk about how symbols could be good, ones that are, of course, natural. We talk about food being natural as good. So it seems like to me that nature could be used as good or bad, depending, like you said, on the user of the person who's developing, I guess you could say, this magic, and taking that as a form of manipulation or for conscious creation, which is what I call it, which is to create a more empowering world versus one entrenched in darkness. So where does that whole nature worship work? Because I remember you showed on your presentation about the dark occult, you showed that interview from Nicholas Schreck, and he was showing the Norse symbology. He had the tree of life on his arm. Why would a Satanist have that on his arm, and do they see those symbols as a means for evil or special knowledge for themselves, and they keep that away from people? How is the nature relationship used?
Yeah, a lot of them will take this Darwinian perspective of nature as a dog-eat-dog world, and by observing the animal kingdom organize itself into hierarchical structures based on the most physically powerful or the most ruthless of the animal kingdom ruling the roost of their species. They will try to turn that into the human domain. That's called social Darwinism, and it's the third tenet of Satanism. Of course, egotism being the primary tenet, moral relativism being the secondary, and then the tertiary tenet is social Darwinism. This is organizing human social structures in the same way that the animal hierarchical structures are organized in the animal kingdom, which is a very, very bad premise to begin any organization of society based upon, because we are not just any other animal. See, this is the deception that is taught in Satanism, that man is just like the other animals, no different. No, incorrect. We are a different classification of animals because we have the ability to think at a much higher level. Our cognitive capabilities enable us to adapt to our environment in different ways than the rest of the animal kingdom, and process information in entirely different ways than any other animal in the entire animal kingdom. So we are not just another animal. We have higher thought functions that almost every other animal lacks, certainly in the ways that we possess them, they lack. We also have more highly organized emotions, highly structured and organized emotions than animals do. Animals do obviously feel and have emotions, feel pain, feel suffering, feel loss, etc. But I would say that anyone who is reasonably intelligent and looks at human emotional capacity understands that it is much more, deeply and organized in a much more higher organizational way than the simple stimulus response type of emotional response that most animals are able to experience and project. Again, that is not to say that animals do not feel suffering and pain or anything like that. It is to just say that we have a higher level organization when it comes to our thoughts and our emotions. That's why we are not the same as other animals. We are actually the one being on this planet that can act as in stewardship of the animal kingdom, because they don't have those capacities and we do. We can see to tend to the environment so that animals thrive and prosper. Okay, we can tend to their betterment and well-being. We are definitely a different being altogether. Human beings are a different classification of animal than any other animal in the animal kingdom. So we have to reject that first, idea of human beings that as it is seen in the Satanic religion as just another animal. Okay, this is one of the main principles brought forward in the Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey. Okay, that man is just another animal, and he's often worse than the other animals in the animal kingdom. Well, that is also a conceded point. We also can be much more destructive than our brothers in the animal kingdom, but that does not mean that we are just any other animal. Okay, we have these higher functions and capabilities, and we should use them to bring our behavior into alignment with natural law and objective morality. We shouldn't just say, the most ruthless should rule the entire human kingdom, and that's really what social Darwinism is. It's saying if you were the one who had the will and the drive to get to the top and rule over other people, then that you deserve to be there because your genetics got you there. It's very almost overtly racist in a way, or I should say gene superiority, not just race, but like one's genes got them to that level. It wasn't the manipulations and deceptions that they did, right? It's their my genes got me there. Then my genes put me at the top of the pecking order, and that's eugenics. That's how they see it. Eugenics is a huge part of Satanism, and they see like, well, hey, if that put me there and my genes are superior, then my progeny should continue to rule, and I should do my best to get other people's bloodlines out of the way. That's called eugenics. That's called dysgenics, really, because you are taking what could be the better aspects of humanity and you're trying to purge them. So you're not really doing anything good to the gene pool. You're actually doing something bad. We shouldn't even call their view of eugenics because it's not. Eugenics means good genes or the improvement of the genetic gene pool. This is dysgenics. This is putting the worst qualities of humanity into the gene pool and trying to breed that down to the next generations instead of the better qualities. So, that's something that people have to realize. First of all, any form of nature worship should really be thrown out because we shouldn't be worshiping anything.
Right.
The idea of worship is ridiculous and nonsensical, and comes from this religiously diseased mindset perspective. Forget worshiping anything. I challenge Christians, find me any place in the Christian Bible that says, where Jesus says to worship him. You will not be able to do it. The words are not there, period. They're not there. Okay. That is the words of the church. That's churchianity. Jesus, whether you believe in the historicity of Jesus or Jesus as an allegory, is irrelevant. The whole point is Jesus did not challenge anybody to worship him. He challenged people to be like him. He challenged people to follow in his footsteps from a moral perspective. Okay. And that's all the figure of Jesus should be seen as: a way shower, an example shower, setting the example through behavior and then challenging people to do as well as he did or better. Okay. And that's the whole point. It's not about worship, right? I would consider myself an esoteric Christian, not a church Christian, one who looks at the example of the allegory of the Christ figure in the New Testament and says, that's an excellent moral perspective to start from, a standpoint of understanding morality. And now let's even work on that, set that as an example, try to aspire to that, and even work on it to grow it in understanding and help to communicate that from a modern, everyday man point of view, not even wrapping it in allegories and wrapping it in fables, just speaking it plainly. speaking it matter-of-factly. That's what I have tried to do in my work. I don't think that the allegorical and symbolic and fable type point of view has as much power as just sitting someone down and talking to them like a human being in very everyday language. I think that's infinitely more powerful. That takes it from the realm of esotericism and occultism and de-occults it, brings it out into the open, into the light of day for people to understand at a very, very simple level, and then build upon that. And I think there's far too few people doing that. They're taking everything from this symbolic, interpretive, allegorical perspective, and it's getting lost in translation, and that's my perspective when it comes even to using too much symbolism or allegory. I use a little bit of it for my work because there's certain symbols that sort of embody the principles of what I try to put forward, and so I'll use them, but I don't saturate everything with symbolism and allegory and try to make it a puzzle to decipher. As you can hear, I talk very plainly and very everyday for the average person to be able to understand and comprehend it, and then put it, to use in their life. So when it comes to that idea of nature worship, I'm not on board with that. I think a lot of dark occultists do see it that way because they are just looking at it from a physical point of view, from a purely, scientismic, materialistic, getting down to the atoms and the subatomic particles, and then, basically saying that's all there is, and this structure organized in a way, so it must be, something to be worshipped or revered or venerated. And they're not seeing it from the perspective that it's all integral, right? The spiritual and the physical are all one. None should be given precedent. It's a unified perspective, and nature is here for our benefit and for our evolutionary growth and development, and it's to guide us along that way. It's not there to be our gods or to be worshipped. So that's my perspective when it comes to that whole nature worship, new agey, or even if it goes off in the really bad tangent direction, that could become a form of Satanism, as well. I don't subscribe to it, and I think we have to have that balanced approach from the truly higher level spiritual perspective, that there is no separation between the spiritual and the material. We are in the spiritual realm right now. This is it, and it is growing and learning and adapting and trying to create novel, unique experiences, and to develop higher levels of awareness and consciousness, and higher levels of freedom, higher levels of organization, etc. That's what evolution is, in my perspective.
Mm-hmm. And it sort of connects to the idea of deism, which you've talked about before as well within your works. And I like using that term too, since it's very simple. And I like that simplistic yet complex approach. As ironic as that is, I see irony in everything. One thing I'm going to mention, I'm just going to throw out there, because people like asking these questions, and I'm not doing it for them, and I don't want people to be like, oh, he's not challenging here, blah blah blah. People are always going to do their thing.
No taboo topics, whatever you want to ask, that's fine.
Right, just the internet, that's how it works. So flat Earth. People say, oh, Mark is against flat Earth. And, when you go into these topics, you're going to ask questions. You're going to be curious. You might run into all this research online about all sorts of events, 9/11, JFK, all these assassinations, all these big events. And you'll start questioning every little thing. And for some people, flat Earth is that bridge that breaks open everything else. But I know that your view on that might not be the same as other people's views. So what is your view on flat Earth, and have you looked into the works of Eric Dubay?
Oh, I've looked into all of it. You would not even imagine the amount of hours I spent looking at people's arguments, because I don't close off information and just say, because that immediately conflicts with what I already feel is the case, that I throw it out. Okay. So number one, for people to say I haven't looked at it, you have zero idea of what I've looked at or the amount of time I've spent looking at it. Okay. So number one, no one should make the claim I haven't looked at the data. Okay. as I stated earlier about when people don't look into the occult world, they don't understand the language of the occult. Well, I feel that many people do not have a basis in how the scientific methodology is actually done. They have a belief-based perspective for something that simply makes sense to them at the time, but they don't understand how to challenge that using the trivium methodology, which is the real scientific methodology. A lot of scientists don't know how to do that. Okay. I have a background in science. Okay. I worked in scientific institutions, which many people cannot even say that they have ever done. Plus, I have a very logically structured mind because of my work in technology and troubleshooting technology, often at high level systems in scientific laboratories that I needed to troubleshoot as part of my job. So I had to very logically organize my thought structure in a very, stepwise progressive way to be able to troubleshoot root causal problems. That's how the scientific methodology is actually constructed and done. And it's done through the elimination of logical inconsistencies using the trivium method. People should get the book called The Trivium, The Liberal Arts of Grammar, Logic, and Rhetoric. It's a pretty nice, thick hardcover book that goes through all of the aspects of the trivium and how to really think logically, how to do it. And if they applied that to this psyop, they would see through it rather quickly. And I'm only going to give you one logical inconsistency that breaks the entire model. Okay, so first of all, in the scientific methodology, if you're honest with yourself and you're really doing science, you're not conducting scientism, or you're not just staying tied to a belief system. If you really are doing the scientific methodology, the first thing you do when you develop a hypothesis or a model is you basically try to observe things that may break the model. And if they do break the model, then the model must be refined or it must be eliminated and thrown out, and you have to start from square one. That's how real science is done, and that's how real logical thinking is done. So nobody can tell me that I'm just an anti-anything, right? I look for the truth through a logical, consistent scientific method, which is what the trivium is. It's a method of truth discovery. Okay, so I don't have a preconceived notion either way. I'm observing their hypothesized model of a realm that is a flat disk with two orbs circling around up above the top of the plane. Okay, and then I'm simply suggesting an observational course that you could either possibly give credence to the model or disprove the model. So here is a simple observational methodology that any human being on this planet can do for $20. Do you have $20 to invest in your theory? Okay, so if you have $20 to invest in the theory of flat Earth, all the flat earthers out there, it's very simple to do this observational model. Your own model in every single place that this model is hypothesized and suggested in, suggests that there is a disk that we call the Earth, and above it there is the sun and the moon circling above at whatever amount of miles you put your postulate of how many miles those other circling objects are, whether they're globular or not. Okay, but you have a certain amount of miles that they are above the plane, and you say that the light or darkness of the Earth, okay, the median, what is it called, the line that dictates light and dark around the Earth, I can't remember the exact name, median line. Okay, it's about half and half of the disk. Okay, and as the sun goes around, it illuminates half the disk approximately. Now, for this model to be accurate, if we're assuming the accuracy of the model, there has to be a coming closer to the observer during noon and going farther away from the observer at sunset. So this would be the course of the sun. Closest at noon, okay, farthest away, it sets, and now it's on the other side of the disk illuminating the other side. Then it comes closer to me during the day and farther away at sunset. So Any object that goes farther away and closer to you has a change in apparent size. You're seeing it right here. Okay, here is my cell phone. Okay, my cell phone, when it's back here, takes up only this much of the image on your screen. When I go like this, it takes up more of the image of the screen. When I go back like this, it takes up less. There is a change in apparent size of the object. So if it's here at noon and then it goes closer, here would be closer to you at noon like that, then it goes like this, it sets here, and it's farthest away when it's on the other side of the disk. You see it changing in apparent size. It's very simple and observable. So you can confirm if that is true or not observationally. You don't need to go to an expert to confirm that. If that's what your model predicts, confirm the observation, confirm it in observation. That's how science is done. So get a pair of solar observation glasses. Solar observation glasses are available on eBay or Amazon for $10, often even less nowadays. This is what people look at the sun when they're observing an eclipse. If they completely black out everything else, so be careful when you put them on. You're not going to be able to see through them. So be aware of your surroundings. Don't trip over anything. View the sun through the solar observation glasses at noon, view it at dawn, at daybreak when the sun is just rising, view it at 9 a.m., view it at noon, view it at 3 a.m., 6 p.m. until it sets, and make an observation with a digital caliper. Now you will have to make the digital caliper a regimented same distance away from your eyes. So you want to make sure that you're observing the sun, okay, and you have the caliper held away from you at the same amount of space. So you need to measure that and then keep it at that same amount of space. You could have a friend maybe hold a tape measure and try to make exactly, like, let's say 18 inches or whatever. Then measure the sun with the digital caliper. You're going to squeeze the end of the caliper until it goes to the very left hand edge of the sun and the very right hand edge, and take a measurement with your digital caliper. Then do that at hourly times during the day until the sun sets, and you will have almost identical readings. Certainly you will not have a very small reading at sunrise and sunset when it's supposed to be further away from you, and a very large reading at noon. You will have almost virtually identical. It may vary a slight bit with atmospheric conditions during the course of the day, but you will generally have a consistent reading during the whole day. By definition, observationally, you will yourself have disproven the flat earth model. And I could give you 100 other observational disproofs. That's just one that I challenge anybody to do. A digital caliper is available on eBay or Amazon for $10. A pair of solar observation glasses is available on eBay or Amazon or many other sites for $10. For $20, any flat earther can do this experiment during the course of any clear day themselves and come up with a visual, observational disproof of their own model. But they won't. They will not do it. They will not publish their results honestly. I'll already tell you that is the case. You, as a flat earther, whoever is listening out there wants to take me up on my challenge, I'm telling you in advance, you won't do it. I guarantee you won't do it. You will not take the time to set the experiment up properly and do it, and you will not publish honestly your results because they conflict with your religion. The results will conflict with your religion, and your religion cannot be challenged. You don't have science. You have a religious belief system that was imparted unto you and injected into your mind by the sorcerers of the Central Intelligence Agency. That is what you have. That's my challenge. And honestly, until that is done, I don't have anything else to say to flat earthers. That's my challenge to them, and they won't do it.
Yeah, maybe I'll do a video on it then. How about me? I'll do it. I'm not on either side, frankly. I take this point of view of David Icke. It doesn't really matter, you know, we're spiritual
I agree
beings.
with that as well. But that being said, here's how flat Earth is being used. It's a psyop to discredit legitimate researchers and legitimate truth speakers in the truth movement, because the average person sees that and will go, look at what an unscientific idiot this person is. They don't even know how to do a basic observational scientific experiment,
Hmm.
you know, and then it'll discredit people who are really telling the truth
Right.
in the truth movement. You know,
Yeah.
that's how it's a big psyop, and it's a danger to this community, which is why I've been so vocal about it. Again, people think they know how to do science, and they know nothing about science. All they know how to do is accept a belief system from one person or another. That's why I said from day one, the most dangerous thing you could do is believe me. Don't believe me. Do the work yourself to uncover the truth. There is a truth about what I say. I'm not telling people to accept the truth from me. I'm telling people that I have done the work to uncover the truth through the trivium method, and so can you. You can do the same observational experiments. You could do the same tests that I have done, and you can come to an understanding of what is through those methodologies. You don't need to believe anybody. I think belief, faith, and religion need to go where they really belong and be flushed down the cosmic toilet bowl, quite frankly. All of them lead to problems in our world.
I agree. You mentioned truth community, which, you know, we use that a lot, and I'll be honest, I've been talking about that a lot on my channel, criticizing sort of the truth community in some regards. You know, truth community, because we're talking of, there's a lot of people in the so-called truth community going on the left versus right, a lot of them talking about some of these religions, as you say, and I agree. And they're going about all these things. Are we really the truth community for not focused on freedom or the simple aspects overall? This is one of the main reasons why I see natural law as sort of such a unifying idea that needs to be shared among the truth community if we're actually going to be a community. Otherwise, what do we share other than a bunch of dialectics that are just here to get clicks and generate, you know, a bunch of people who are just, again, following a whole new religion? And that's what I see, unfortunately, with a lot of independent media, is there's not the unity that could be if they recognize these ideas of natural law. I think it's
And
our
that
responsibility in the One Great Work Network to share just the natural law with even our fellow peers, people who claim
absolutely.
to want have freedom, claim to want to all that, but they don't know exactly how, or how to
And, and
ground themselves in such a
And you know,
community.
to go back to psyops, these are the types of things that the sorcerers of our world float out there to try to create that dissension in the ranks. They're very adept at disrupting community. They're adept at preventing community from connecting and growing. That's what they want to do, right? But at the same time, once a dialectic is formed, one side only has to be manipulated. I've talked about this in my work endlessly, right? That once a dialectic is created by mind controllers, if one side takes the bait, the dialectic is successful. Both sides do not have to take the bait, right? So I don't have to be a non-flat earther or an anti-flat earther, right? The flat earth community is the one that took the bait of the psyop. Once they take the bait, they're off to the races attacking anybody that doesn't agree with their religion, right? So then there's the dissension in the ranks already sown.
Right.
Yeah, just not to belabor it, but you want to know how to break the mind of a flat earther? Ask him how, ask them what is happening during a lunar eclipse and watch their mind just melt, right? Because if both the sun and the moon are above the earth, well, yeah, if the moon comes down here and is between the earth plane down here and the sun up here, you have a solar eclipse. What creates the lunar eclipse? Something has to get between the sun and the moon from the earth perspective to create the lunar eclipse. So what is that? And their mind just melts because they can't explain it in their model, right? So they've come up with something, though. Do you know what they've come up with? And this is for real, Cory. I'm not making this up. This is really what they explain it as: the shadow object. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of the shadow object? Oh, it's so much fun. So much fun when you start to research the shadow object, because it shows the nature of their religion. If something does not fit with the model and observationally disproves it, you must make up data to confirm your religion. Okay, so please do me the favor, as a fellow member of the One Great Work Network, to research the shadow object, and you will, I mean, it will provide endless hours of enjoyment and cracking up laughing. Okay, and I swear to you, I'm not making this up. This is their model, that there is an hence heretofore unknown object that has no mass and is never seen at any other time, except between the place where on the earth a lunar eclipse will be witnessed and in between the sun, and it goes in that perspective and it angles itself just properly, and it creates that curved shadow on the surface of the moon. That's not the earth, that's the shadow object. Yeah, that's their mentation. That is their, what they consider scientific methodology. And look, let's put it this way. This is why we're getting our asses handed to us on a platter. We are getting beaten so unmercifully. It is Mike Tyson versus Emmanuel Webster. Okay, literally, we're putting those two in the ring, and Mike is swinging with his uppercut viciously on the jaw of Emmanuel Webster. Okay, just picture that in your mind. That's where our community is at. We're Emmanuel Webster, and the dark occult and the sorcerers of our world is Mike Tyson in his prime, with a vicious right hook to the rib cage and the kidney area, followed immediately by the right uppercut, knocking the person senseless. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. You know, because
we don't have the numbers, the courage to stand up and punch back, or to defend ourselves.
That too, we don't have that courage, but more than that, we don't have the knowledge about how to really uncover the truth. We're so easily misled down a garden path that leads to nowhere, that's a cul-de-sac to nowhere, you know, just to get people infighting and just to create some new thing for people to latch onto, like a religion, because that binds them in this community of belief. Right? And then they can say everybody else in the rest of the world is out to get us and is against us. The dialectic only, it immediately works if only one side takes the bait. In a dialectic of two false extremes, neither side has to take the bait. And then the dialectic is put down. Then it's flushed down the toilet where it belongs. But if one side takes it, they're going to latch onto it like grim death, like hanging onto a corpse, okay? And they're going to say everybody else on the other side of this mentation is our enemy. And that's the pitfalls that we have to watch out for. That's where having discernment comes into play in this community. And that comes from real observational methodologies and truth discovery methodologies. That's why I suggest to people, really learn the trivium. Don't say that you know it. Get a good book on it, or a very good video explanation of it, and really go down the rabbit hole when it comes to scientific process and methodology through the trivium. If you get that book that I was talking about, it's called The Trivium, the ancient, I think it's called The Ancient Liberal Arts of Grammar, Logic, and Rhetoric, or the Classical Liberal Arts of Grammar, Logic, and Rhetoric. You got to get the one with that subtitle. The Trivium, the Classical Liberal Arts of Grammar, Logic, and Rhetoric. It's a brown cover with a lot of symbols on the cover, like mathematical symbols and whatnot. And if you get that book and you really read it cover to cover and really deeply understand the logical fallacies that are put in there and the methodologies that are used to come logically to the truth about any given topic, you will very much clarify in your mind the reality from fantasy, truth versus a constructural belief system that exists only in mind. And that's what our community needs to do. It needs to develop that type of discernment. And I think if we do that, we're going to go a real long way toward a true solution of human freedom and betterment of our community and more cohesiveness within our own community.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me, for sharing all this. This is fantastic. Very powerful. I love it, as usual. One thing that I look forward to, and maybe this will be the last question for you, if you would like to answer upon this.
Sure.
I look toward that better tomorrow, right? And I'm not super negative, like, yeah, things are going bad, and that is what it means to say people wake up, slap in the face, right? But at the same time, it's like, hey guys, there is a better tomorrow, and this is what it looks like. And I've been, telling people, like, no, we can be free. This is what it looks like. People interacting, they're trading with one another. How do we create that environment where, we don't allow government to ever grow again? Perhaps it's deconstructing that belief system that you talk about, but it being statism in this case, and that being, I see, the most important thing to focus on for our freedom. Do you think that better tomorrow is possible? What does it look like?
I definitely think that it is possible Whether we will make the willful decision to will that existence into creation is definitely questionable in my estimation. Humanity has to develop self-respect and self-love for itself, for each individual. And unfortunately, I don't think we're at that anywhere near that place. Most people are content to live in slavery. Most people are content to have masters. I think the thing that will really help people to understand it is understanding natural law and objective morality. I think people have to really understand that the concept of authority itself is evil on its face. And how we can start doing that is just try to explain to the average human being, is authority the claim of ownership, right? Most people never even have thought that, right? So do I have authority over the usage of this phone? Yes, I do. You know why? It's my property. I own this phone. I have authority. If I want to snap this in half, if I want to put it on the edge of the desk and pound it until it snaps in half, it's my property. I'm allowed to do that because I own it, right? I have authority over what is done with this inanimate piece of matter because I am allowed ownership over an inanimate piece of matter. You know, same thing with this pair of glasses. These are my prescription glasses. If I want to take a hammer and smash them, it's my property. I'm allowed to do that. Okay. I have authority over this object. Can you have any legitimate authority over a being? Can anyone have legitimate authority over another living being? And the answer, if we're being honest with ourselves, is no. You cannot have authority over me. I cannot have authority over you. You cannot have authority over anyone. I cannot have authority over anyone. No one can have authority over you. No one can have authority over me. No one can have authority over anyone. If you can't do it on an individual level, it can't be granted on a collective level. This is the axiomatic flaw in human thought. This is the religion that people cannot let go of, regardless of what proof is brought to their attention. They don't have a problem in understanding. They have an attachment to a religion. The religious thought is what has to be destroyed. Religion, as I define it, is an untrue and illusory line of thought that leads people away from the truth of any given matter. And it does harm in the process. When you have a religious belief system that conflicts with actual truth in nature, you are doing harm by staying latched onto what is wrong. You cannot create betterment in your own life or in the lives of any beings, in any environment, in any community, in any society, by believing what is wrong. Believing what is wrong leads to acting upon what is wrong. That becomes harmful action in nature. Acting upon truth, taking in truth, accepting truth, and then acting upon that creates right action in nature. When we are conducting wrong action, we're going to become more enslaved. When we're conducting right action, we're going to become freer as individuals and as a collective society. That is how natural law works. It is immutable, it is unchangeable, it is eternal. It is not set forward by man, it is set forward by the laws of creation as put forward by the creator of our universe. Whether you are religious, whether you are God-believing or not, then you could look at it as a force. I consider it an impersonal force that is built into the fabric of reality. It has underlying intelligence, but it does not act personally, okay? It simply brings us the results of what we put out into the world. As such, our universe operates as a cosmic mirror of morality. The more immoral things we do, the more immoral things we are going to experience done unto us. The more moral ways that we behave and bring our behavior into alignment with objective morality, we're going to become free, and infinite possibilities are going to open up unto us as individuals and a species. That's how natural law works. If anybody wants to learn more about that, they can visit my website, whatonearthishappening.com, where they could get my natural law documentary called Mark Passio and the Science of Natural Law, which I lay it out in a very rudimentary perspective that any individual can very easily understand. So, Cory, I want to say thank you. Phenomenal questions in the interview. Great job. Good job that you're doing on the One Great Work Network. I appreciate your efforts there. Thank you for being part of our community, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. And we need to be grounded. We need to have these universal, timeless ideas and keep that up. I love the fact you go right to that, You don't give me a specific example, a specific time and place for somebody's opinion. You give me what works always, and what this interview will last for all of time and be universally applicable.
Absolutely. It's evergreen. That's the way I like to put out the content, that it'll work at all times and places. So thank you for this opportunity, and best of luck in your future endeavors.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Have a great day.